Okay. So I'm recording now. Um, Give me 1 second. I'm just gonna open up Audacity. Okay, I'll stream my desktop. Second, and then okay. So here's my audio portrait of a place folder. Just as I was talking about with Photoshop and Illustrator, this .aup file, that's the Audacity file, which has everything together. And so that's what you're going to have to submit when you're done with the assignment, and I'll go over that at the end of this demo. The other files here are the source files that I've downloaded to create my project, and then the sources for the sounds that I downloaded that I need to cite. So if I double click on my Audacity project, this is going to open up Audacity. And I'm just going to show a couple different effects you can do. There's a lot of effects, so I'm not going to go over all of them, but I'll just show you kind of where they are and how you can. So I'm going to switch my stream over to Audacity so you can see it. Okay. So for your project, anything between like a minute to 3 minutes is going to be plenty long. Mine's going to be very short because I'm not going to, create the whole project. But basically, I have a few different tracks. That's pretty much what you're going to want to have. You don't have to have exactly the same things that I have. I have a little bit of a voiceover. I have this like bottle cap thing that I recorded here, and then I have some cafeteria crowd noise and some music. And so those are a few different types of audio that I'm going to mix together. And I'm going to go over a couple of different things I can do to make them sound good together. Um, you don't have to have all of these exact types of sources. As long as you're combining different types of audio, that's fine. You might be recording a little bit outside and adding some background music, or you might have a voiceover along with some recording. You can kind of mix and match the options however you want. But I'm just going to edit out the end of these longer clips here just to keep this a little bit simpler. So I'm just going to select this clip and then hit the delete key just to cut off the ending. I don't really need all this extra audio, so that'll make it a little bit easier to work with. So first thing I'm going to talk about is adding some effects in here. There's a couple different ways that we can add effects. There's an effects button right here to add real-time audio effects. These are non-destructive, meaning that basically you can turn them on and off. So if I go to add effect, it's going to make me download them. That's okay. I'm not actually going to use these. But I want to point that out because I want to talk about the difference between destructive and non-destructive editing. So I'm going to close this for a second and we'll add effects in a second. So I'm just going to solo my voice real quick. And when I play this back, we'll hear, it's pretty much set to the basic settings. Welcome to BMCC. Okay, so if I want to make that louder, I can increase the gain or decrease the gain. So if I want to make it a little bit quieter, I can turn this down. Welcome to BMCC. And that's going to be a little bit quieter. And if I want to change the pan, I can pan it all the way over to my left speaker. Welcome to BMCC. And I can pan it over to my right speaker. Welcome to BMCC. So these are examples of non-destructive editing because I can change that. Once I set it over here, I can just move this slider back. And so even though this is changing the output, it's not changing the actual audio data right here. This is the audio data here. If I go to my effects panel up here and I add different effects in here, that is going to do something called destructive editing. That means that it changes the actual audio data in a way that we can't restore. You can do like an edit undo, but if I do an edit and then I save and leave Audacity and come back later, those edits are still going to be there. And the only way I can go back to how it was originally is by deleting the track and bringing the original audio source back. So that's just something to keep in mind as you add these edits. So one thing that I'll typically do with my audio, that's one of my effects, is go to volume and compression, and I'll click normalize. And we talked about this a little bit. This is just going to make the audio the same loudness. So usually I'll do -6 dB here, click apply. You can see it got a little bit louder. You can hear that. Welcome to BMCC. Okay, so that is a way that I can make sure that my audio is about the same loudness. So I can unsolo this for a second. I'm going to mute my background track and then listen to my Coke bottle here. And then if I want to make sure that these are the same relative loudness, I can go to Effect and go to Normalize and Apply. And we didn't really see any big change there, so it's already quite loud. So that is going to work okay. So usually that's the first thing I'll do with my audio is normalize it. With these sounds that I downloaded, I downloaded them from a website, and I assume that they're already been professionally mastered, so I'm not too worried about sounds. But if they were really quiet for some reason, I could use normalization to bring them back up. Okay, so another thing I might want to do, especially with my voiceover audio, is I might want to use a noise gate. So if we zoom in on the voiceover audio, there's going to be some noise in between my speaking, and you may want to get rid of that. So for example, if we look here, we can't really hear that because we're listening to speakers. You might be able to hear it if you were on headphones or something like that. Let's see if we can see that waveform. It's actually pretty quiet there. So I wonder, maybe the microphone has some built-in compression going. But I'll show what this does anyway. So if I go to Effect and go to Volume and Compression, that's not in here. Let's go to, here it is, under Noise Removal and Repair. If I go to Noise Gate, essentially what this does is it sets a threshold for loudness, and it cuts all the audio that's not at that threshold. So you can see the threshold is -40. That's usually a good place to start. Just to as an example of something kind of dramatic, I'm going to set the threshold to -12. And you're going to see it's going to see how much audio it just cut out. So anything that didn't get above that threshold, it's going to cut out with the gate. Welcome to BMCC. So only the really loud parts are kept. So that's not what we normally want to do, but if we apply this effect at a more typical volume like -40, what we'll do is we'll get rid of any background noise that was recorded. Welcome to BMCC in the original recording. So if there's like, a fan from the computer in the background, if there's like people talking in the background but it's very quiet, it'll take out those areas if they go below that threshold. So that's another thing I'll normally do with my voiceover. I'll just take the whole thing, and I'm gonna go to noise gate, and -40 is a pretty good threshold. You might do -30-ish. It kind of depends on where your volume is, but I'll usually just apply, and you can see now these areas where there's no talking are completely flat. There's no volume whatsoever. So let's see if we can see the difference. It's a little bit hard to see on this particular recording. But if we zoom in a little bit and then I redo that, and we don't really see it. Yeah, there must be some pretty good compression on this computer already. Try it one more. Okay, you can see it cut a little bit of that stuff there. So it's basically taking the quiet stuff and just cutting them completely. The noise gate is really useful for voiceovers. It may not be useful for other things that you're working with. It kind of depends. If you want to get, really into stuff, another thing you can do is called EQing. This is where you're taking all the frequencies in a sound and you're moving them up and down to get different audio. This is a little bit harder to get right, but you can get some interesting effects here. I'm going to select a portion of my audio. And let's say, for example, I wanted to make it sound like I was on the phone. I'm Professor Roberts. So that's what it sounds like kind of by default. But if I was trying to make it sound like I was talking to somebody on the phone, when you're talking to someone on the phone cuts out a lot of the lower frequencies because there's not a lot of data in these lower frequencies that's actually going to help somebody understand what you're saying. Instead, it probably will muddy up the signal that comes through the phone. So one of the ways that the phone makes your voice more clear is just by cutting out the frequencies that aren't really necessary for understanding your voice. So if I go to my effects and I go to EQ and filters, and I'm going to use, I could do like a high pass or a low pass that just like takes it all off, but I'm going to use the graphic. Whoops. I'm going to
Sorry,
use.
sir. We can't see any of the what you're showing us. Like it doesn't show like
Oh, I
the
forgot. It doesn't show the dialogues because, oh crap.
yeah.
Okay. Uh, well, I'll share um, my screen. You're not going to be able to hear it, but I'll go back in a second. So just to show the graphic equalizer, basically if I go to effects, go to EQ and filters, go to graphic EQ, this shows me all of the different bands of frequencies. So very low frequencies over here. Anything below 100, nobody's voice is really below 100. So you can pretty much just cut those out without changing the sound at all. Most people's voices are somewhere between like 400 and 1K. Some people with higher voices might be between like 1K and 1.2 or something like that. But this range in the middle, that's pretty much where everyone's voices is. Nobody's voice goes up to 20K, and nobody's voice goes below 100K. So if you look at the presets and settings, there's some factory presets here. If I do a bass cut, and apply this. So you're going to see the waveform will change a little bit. And let me switch over. This is kind of annoying, but I guess that's what we'll have to do. Okay, so now let's listen to how that sounds. I'm Professor Roberts. Okay, so notice it's subtle, but it sounds, there's no bass in there anymore. So we cut out all the bass. And so we get this like tinier, more electronic sounding part of my voice. And that's really, it sounds weird, but it's all you really need in terms of hearing the actual content of what I'm saying. And so that's why the phone is cutting out those bass frequencies that might muddy up the signal otherwise. And so if you want to get that kind of effect where it sounds like you're on the phone from regular audio, that's an easy way to do it, is just by cutting out the lower frequency. So EQing is kind of hard. That's when you get into like some of the more challenging components of mastering and mixing music, is like actually getting the EQs right. We don't really have time in this class to go over it, but there's a couple basic things you can do there. If there's a lot of low end and it's like muddying up the sound, cut out the low end. If there's too much high end, you can also cut out the high end. So let's see, which oh, okay, I'm just streaming the application right now. So if you want to do goofy stuff, let me show you guys a couple things you can do. If you want to do some like goofy effects, there's a few things you can do. And again, these are destructive things. So if you do this and you don't want to keep it, make sure to undo it before you leave the program. So if I go to effect and I go to pitch and tempo, I can actually change the pitch of my voice. And I can change the speed. I can do a bunch of different weird stuff here. I can also reverse it. So let's look at a couple of those things. I'll apply a couple things and then switch over so we don't have to do it a bunch of times. So I'm gonna take this first section. I'll just select it, go to effect, and go to reverse. We'll see how that's going to sound. Okay. Then I'm going to go over here and I'm going to select this part. And I'm going to go to effect and go to pitch and tempo, and I'm going to change the pitch. And so if you know a lot about music, this should make sense to you, but if not, basically you can just focus on the percentage change down here and not worry about this part. So what I'll do is just zero this out. So if I, whoops, that didn't do anything because it was at 0. Okay, so if I go back to change pitch, if I have a 0% change, it's not changing at all. And I can change the pitch by tones.
You're not streaming.
Oh, I'm not streaming at all? Shit, sorry.
No.
Okay. Okay. So let me do that again. Okay. So the first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to select this first section and go to Effect and Pitch and Tempo. I'm going to reverse this section. Okay, we'll hear what that sounds like in a second. Then I'm going to go to this next section right here, and I'm going to go back to Effect, go to Pitch and Tempo, and change pitch. So right now it's 0, so if the pitch is G, it's going to sound the same. And then I can move the pitch up over here to increase the pitch of my voice. And so I'm just going to do 100% because it's going to be easy to hear the difference there. So I'm going to hit apply there. But then my voice is also going to sound kind of weird there. So another thing I can do, I'm going to select this section over here and go to effect and go to pitch and tempo. And you can change the speed. So you can kind of reverse the effects of changing the pitch. So basically I can do the speed multipliers like 0.5 or 0.5. So that'll be half the speed. Okay, so we'll listen to those 3 sections and you can kind of see how those different effects change your voice. Again, this is not probably what you would want to do for like a podcast or anything like that, but if you want to get some interesting effects, stuff like that. Okay, so now we should be able to hear that. Let's listen to the reversed. Okay, so that's kind of weird and fun. You could do that with your voice or music or whatever. Here's the changed pitch section.
I'm Professor Roberts.
Okay, so you can hear I sound like a chipmunk. That's kind of fun if you want to work with that. And then here's the slowed down version. So you can combine the slowed down version and the pitch version to speed up or slow down your voice, but keep the relative pitch. So if I go back here, and I'm going to switch my stream again to full screen. Okay, so if I go back here to where I pitched it up and go to effect and go to change speed. So now if I slow it down again, I think that was maybe too much, but we'll find out in a second. And then same thing over here, I sped this up, but I can change the pitch, or I slowed this down, but I can change the pitch. So I can go to pitch and tempo and go to change pitch, and I can increase the pitch. And so now this should sound just like a faster or a higher pitched and a faster version. Okay, let's switch one more time. And listen to those. I'm Professor Roberts. Okay, so now it's like slowed down, but it's the same pitch as the original. It sounds kind of bad because I was, when I slow it down and then speed it back up, I start to get some artifacts. And I'm making and same thing, it's slowed down, but the pitch is restored. So you can combine those effects together to get different things if you want to speed up or slow down your voice. Normally, when you do that, you're not going to do it quite as dramatically as I've done it there. You might have heard things like that. Like if you see an ad, this is really common in ads for like drugs from pharmaceuticals, where they have that part at the end of the ad where somebody comes in and it says all the side effects like really, really fast. It will actually speed up the voice actor's voice in cases like that, so it takes up less time in the ad. And that's how you have to do it. You speed it up, but then you reset the pitch. Anyway, you probably don't need to do that, but it's kind of fun if you want to. Okay, so we already talked a little bit about changing the audio. I want to go over that one more time and show a couple different ways to do it. So I'm going to switch my screen over. Do the full screen for a second. Okay, so I'm going to show a couple different ways to do this. So if I want my my crowd at the cafeteria, if I want this to fade in over the course of my recording, and I'm going to undo all that stuff because it sounds weird. So you can undo stuff after you've done those edits, but if you save and leave Audacity and come back, then you won't be able to undo. Okay, so I want to fade in my cafeteria crowd. Welcome to BMC. So it's pretty quiet. I think I made it quieter over here. I'm going to increase the volume for a second just so I can hear it better. So one way of doing this is just using the fade in effect. I can just like select the whole part that I want to fade in and then go to effects and go to fading and click fade in. And that's destructive editing. So I'm actually changing the sound data there. So if I save Audacity and leave, I won't be able to change this. But if I know that that's what I want, I can just do it like that. Welcome to. So I get a nice fade in there. I'll play it back in a second. And then if I want to fade out at the end over here, I can select the part that I want to fade out and go to effect and go to fading and click fade out. Okay, so that just does a fade there. And then if I don't want anything beyond here, I can just select the end of this section and just hit delete on the keyboard. And so now we've got that nice fade in. So that's a destructive way of doing that edit. With the music, I'm going to do a non-destructive way of doing this. So I'm going to unmute the music for a second and I'm going to make this a little bit smaller. And I've showed this a little bit before, but I'm just going to show it again. I can do automation. So if I click on this little tool here, this is automation. So I can create an envelope. And so I can make a little point here and change the volume. So I can increase the volume. I'm going to make this a little bit bigger. And so let's say I want the music to fade in a little bit longer. I can drag this all the way over here. But this would be good if I'm not exactly sure how loud I want the music to be, how long I want it to fade in for, because I can change these edits. This is non-destructive editing. I can come back in here later and fix these to sound different. So I'm going to fade out the music. And I can add as many of these little points as I want. And oops. My computer is slowing way down because I'm doing too much stuff, so making it hard to get a good example from this. But anyway, let's switch over and listen to it real quick. Okay, so let's listen to the cafeteria first. I'm going to solo this track. Rewind first. Okay, so that sounds pretty good. I'm going to lower the volume of this again and unsolo it. Now I'm going to solo the music track and listen to how that sounds. Okay, so that's pretty good. So I'm going to lower the overall volume of this again. So I can lower the main track volume, and that combines with the automation to get the ultimate volume there. And so now I've got everything I would need for my final project. And so what I want to do is export a file. I'm going to clip off the end. Okay. So now I want to export my file and submit my finished project. So I'm going to have to go back over to the full screen stream to go over this. Okay. So just like with Photoshop and Illustrator, the edited version of my project in Audacity is one file, but I can't publish this. I can't put it online. I can't publish it as a podcast because it has too much data. It has all this information in it. So what I want to do is export it as a file that can be played on the internet or on a phone or computer or whatever. So I'm going to export a file. So I'm going to go to File and then go to Export. And I have a bunch of different options here. So MP3 is going to be a smaller version of the file. It'll sound pretty good, but it'll not be quite as good quality as some of the other options. There's also WAV. That's going to be a very large version of the file. So it's probably too large to distribute, but it'll have really high quality audio. And then there's OGG, which is kind of a good combination. It's going to be a smaller file size, but a higher quality audio, but it's not really supported by as many devices. So probably the best one for us for what we're doing is going to be the MP3. I'm going to use export as MP3. That is going to bring up this dialog. And so I just want to make sure I'm in the right folder. I'm going to go to my MMP 100 folder and go to my audio portrait folder. And then there's a few settings here. You can just leave these all as the defaults. They should be fine. I'm going to click Save. And it says your tracks will be mixed down and exported as one stereo file. That's what I'm going for, so I'll click OK. And then you can see there's some metadata here that's kind of filled in, and it's actually sourced this from the artist, I think, of the sound that I downloaded. So I don't really want this in here. I'm just going to delete this. If you want to replace this with your own metadata, you can, but you don't need to. I don't know why there's so much information in here. But if you want to put your own information here, you could say copyright. You could say artist name, whatever you want to put in here is fine. It doesn't really make a big difference. And then I'll just click OK, and that's going to export the recording. If you have a longer project, it's going to take a little bit while longer, but it shouldn't be too long. And so now, if I look in my folder, I have my recording1.mp3. That's the exported version of my recording. So this is what I'm going to put on the Open Lab. This recording.aup is what I'm going to submit on Blackboard. Okay, so now I'm ready to submit this project. I'm going to go to my browser and go to the Open Lab. I'm already here, and I'm just going to click New Post. And so for the title, we can just call this Audio Portrait of BMCC. You can call it whatever you want. And then we're going to add audio in here. So when you click on the box here, audio is not one of the default options. So you can search for audio, and you'll see it comes up here. And then you can click Upload and find your audio folder or your audio file, recording1.mp3, and click Open. And that's going to upload it. And it has an embedded audio player, so that works fine. And then I'm going to go back to the audio page here. I was editing it, but I want to see the published version. So down here, just like we had for the Photoshop and Illustrator project, there's a template for what your statement should look like. So it's pretty much the same thing. So I'm just going to fill this in real quick. title is Audio Portrait of BMCC. Then we have the semester/year is spring 2023. Then the software is Audacity. And then a quick description. So I'm just going to write, I combined short voiceover. Welcome to BMCC with a recording of opening Coke bottle and some background sounds of a cafeteria, along with some background. And so you can write as much as you want here to explain what you're going for with your piece. You can talk about other editing techniques that you may have used. You could talk about the sort of narrative or the goal of the piece or the place that you're creating a portrait of. And then the last thing we have to do is just add in citations for any of the sound files that you use. So for this one, you don't actually have to use other sources. You could record everything on your phone or with your computer. But if you did use other sources, we need to cite them. So I kept track of those sources in my little notes or sources.txt file. I'm just going to quickly go back to those pages and find the license information. So this is just like what we did with our images for our Photoshop project. So I'm going to say sound sources. And for this in the template, we have the title of the work, the author's name, the license, the website, the date uploaded, and the URL. So all of the information that we need. So the name of this work is Crowded Cafeteria, this recording. So I'll put that in quotation marks. And this is by, the username is sonically_sound. And I don't, this like put a link in here, which I guess is fine. Yeah, I guess I can leave the link in there. I don't really need it there. Let's actually take it off because we're going to put the URL at the end. Okay, so we have the title and name, then the license. So you'll be able to see the license here. You can just use whatever it says here. If you want to link out to the specific license, you can. So I'm just going to put Creative Commons 0. That's the name of this license. And then the website is freesound.org. And the date of upload is March 2nd, 2022. So I can just copy that. I can say uploaded March 22nd, 2022. And then finally, I'll just put a link to this URL at the end. So then the next one is the audio I took from Free Music Archive. So the name of this track is Stellari or something. I'll just type that in. And it's by Stereo Hada. And the license is Creative Commons by NC-ND 4.0. So this means non-commercial, no derivatives, which is a little bit restrictive, but I'm not super worried about that. So Creative Commons by ND-NC 4.0. That's the full name of the license. If you just put like 4.0, by NC by ND, or yeah, by NC ND, that's fine. The by means attribution, so you have to say who made it. No non-commercial means you can't make money off whatever you use it in. And then no derivatives kind of means that you're really not supposed to use it in other types of projects. But since this is just a demo, I'm not too worried about them getting mad about it. If they do, I can just take it down. Anyway, I'm going to say Free Music Archive .org, and see if there's a date on here. released, oh, it's pretty recent, 2023. And then finally, just a link to the track. Okay, and so that's everything that we need for this project. I'm going to go preview that real quick. Okay, so we have the audio file at the top, which I can play back in the browser. Welcome to, although I don't think you guys can hear that. Then the title, semester year, software, description, and the sources that were used. Okay, so now when I'm ready, when I've got all this done and I'm ready to submit, I'm going to publish this project or this page. And once this is ready, I'm going to go to Blackboard. So I'm going to copy a link to this and I'm going to go over to Blackboard. And once this loads, I'm going to go to Assignments and go to Audio Portrait of a Place. And so you can see the requirements here. So we need to post an AUP file. It says or compressed zip file. I'm going to go over this, but sometimes your AUP file is going to be really large because it's got copies of all the audio in it. And Blackboard might tell you it's too much to upload. I'm going to go over what to do in that case. Excuse me. Excuse me. Then the MP3 or whatever file you export is going to be part of your OpenLab post, along with the credits and everything that's on there. So you just have to upload the AUP file. So I'm going to write a submission and just paste in my OpenLab link here. Excuse me. And now I have to upload my file. So I'm going to go to Attach Files and click Browse Local File. And I'm already in my project folder, but if I wasn't, I would go to the desktop and then find my MMP 100 folder, go to Audio Portrait of a Place, and click on the AUP file, click Open. And it looks like it's okay with this. I'm just going to click Submit and see if it gives me an error. I don't know how big the file is. Let's check that real quick. So it's over 100 megabytes. It's a pretty large file. It's bigger than the Photoshop file that I created or anything else. So it's taking a little while to upload. We'll see what it says, but while it's doing that, I'll show you what you need to do if it's too large. So this AUP3 file, it's 100 megabytes. If Blackboard tells me that's too large, what I can do is I can right click and go to Send To, and then click Compressed Folder. If you're on a Mac, you can do basically the same thing. You just right click and then you'll see there's an option just to archive or compress the file. So it's compressing the file. What it's doing is it's making a zip folder, and it's doing some compression to make the file smaller. And it actually didn't really do that much. It only made it 97 megabytes, so that doesn't really help that much. But kind of depends. It might save you some space and you can upload it. But it let me upload it anyway, so I'm not too worried about that. So if Blackboard tells you the file's too big, you can try zipping it. If it still tells you the file's too big, then we'll have to figure out another way to do it. We could use, Google Drive or something like that. But hopefully for most of you guys, it will be. Okay, so then I have submitted my project and I'm all good to go. So I'm going to stop the recording here.